The ropes cut deep into Eliza's wrists, numbing her hands as she hung against the rough wooden beams. Her arms stretched until her muscles quivered, her legs bound so tightly she could barely shift her weight. The sun blazed mercilessly, scorching her skin, each bead of sweat stinging as it seeped into her bruises. The heat didn't just burn her body, it stripped her dignity, peeling it away in front of the crowd. People she once called friends, neighbors who shared bread, women who laughed over tea in her kitchen, now stared with disgust, their eyes blind to her pain. "Thief," a voice hissed, sharper than a whip. Another spat, "Shame of the town." A third, colder, muttered, "Let her rot." Eliza shook her head, her tangled hair clinging to her tear-streaked face. "I did nothing," she croaked, but her voice broke, drowned by their judgment. Her pleas were smothered by their silence or mocking laughter. A boy, once small enough to tug at her skirt, now hurled a stone. It struck her shoulder, and the crowd murmured approval. Her knees buckled, but the ropes held her up, turning her weakness into a spectacle. The sun climbed higher, her skin raw, lips cracked from thirst. She couldn't wipe the sweat from her face or shield her eyes from the glare. Flies buzzed, crawling over her cuts, the sweat burning like salt in her wounds. The faces around her, the blacksmith who once smiled, the butcher who gave her scraps as a child, the midwife who held her hand, now looked away. Their silence cut deeper than their words. Shame crushed her chest, each breath shallow. This wasn't justice, it was cruelty dressed as order. Eliza twisted against the ropes, skin tearing. "Please, I beg you," she cried, but her words scattered on the wind. The crowd didn't flinch. Her throat was raw, her tongue heavy, yet she whispered her innocence. "Why me? Why this?" The humiliation burned hotter than the sun. She wanted to collapse, to vanish into the dust, but the ropes forced her upright for all to judge. Then, a memory pierced through the haze. Luke, the town elder's son, cornering her days ago. His hissed words, his hand reaching where it shouldn't, her refusal, his rage. Soon after, the cattle vanished, whispers spread, and blame fell neatly on her. Eliza pressed her cheek to the rough wood, tears mixing with dust. If everyone condemned her, who would uncover the lie before the sun burned her alive? Jacob dropped to one knee, his calloused fingers working at the ropes on Eliza's wrists. Her breathing was faint, but her eyes held a flicker of hope. As the knot loosened, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Step away, Cain." Jacob froze, then turned. Luke strode forward, smirking, a thick-shouldered farmhand at his side gripping a stick. Jacob rose, placing himself between Eliza and the men, his silence a challenge. Luke twirled a knife, eyes narrowing. "She stays where she is. Nobody touches her." Jacob's jaw tightened. "You've had your say. She's coming down." Eliza's voice, ragged but fierce, broke through. "You liar. You tried to force me. I said no, so you blamed me for the cattle." Her words rang like a gunshot. Jacob saw the flicker in Luke's eyes, anger, fear, shame. The farmhand lunged, swinging his stick. Jacob caught it mid-air, shoving the man into the dust with a grunt. Luke charged, knife slashing. Jacob grabbed his wrist, twisted, and the blade fell. Luke's fists flew wild, but Jacob's punch landed hard on his jaw. Luke crumpled, spitting blood, his pride shattered. Jacob freed the last knot, catching Eliza as she sagged. Her voice trembled but cut like steel. "Tell them, Jacob. Tell them about his knife." Jacob glanced at the blade in the dirt, its carved L glinting in the sun. His next move would decide everything. He lifted the knife, turning it so all could see the L etched deep in the handle, Luke's mark, unmistakable in the county. Eliza's voice grew stronger. "I saw him drop it by the cattle fence the night they went missing." Luke's face twisted. "That means nothing. Anyone could have put it there." But his voice faltered. Jacob stepped closer, his shadow looming. You set her up, Luke. Made her pay for saying no. The farmhand groaned, out of the fight. Luke stood alone, smaller without his knife, fear creeping into his eyes. Jacob's voice was steady. This knife's enough for me. It'll be enough for Sheriff Collins, too. Luke spat, you'll regret crossing me, old man. Jacob didn't flinch. I've regretted many things. Not this. Eliza leaned on Jacob's arm, her eyes alight with belief, someone stood with her. Luke stormed off, the farmhand limping behind. Jacob tucked the knife into his belt and lifted Eliza onto his horse. Hold tight. We're riding to town. Let's see how brave Luke feels when the sheriff sees this. The horse plodded toward town, Eliza clinging to Jacob, her face streaked with dust and tears. Do you think he'll believe us? She whispered. If Collins is the man I knew, he'll hear you out, Jacob said. In town, folks stared but kept their distance. At the sheriff's office, Jacob eased Eliza into a chair. Sheriff Collins' eyes widened. Eliza Moore, what happened? She was strung up like a thief, Jacob said. Beaten by the crowd, all because Luke set her up. He pulled the knife, it's L. Stark. Found by the cattle fence. She saw him drop it. Eliza sat straighter. He tried to force me. I said no. Then the cattle were gone, and he blamed me. Collins turned the knife, his boots tapping the floor. He sighed, heavy with the weight of secrets. I knew that boy had his father's arrogance. Never thought he'd stoop this low. Jacob leaned forward. You standing with the truth, Collins? Or letting the elder's son walk? Collins met his gaze, nodding slowly. I'll put this before the council. Luke will face questions. Eliza exhaled, relief mixing with dread. Collins' voice sharpened. This town runs on power as much as truth. Be ready. His father won't let this go quietly. Jacob tipped his hat. We'll meet him head on. That evening, the council gathered in a silent town square. Collins laid the knife on the table, its L undeniable. Luke stood, pale, beside his fuming father. Eliza, bruised but unbowed, spoke clearly. I never stole. All I did was say no when a man tried to take what wasn't his. The crowd shifted, some ashamed, others angry for believing the lie. Collins declared, this town's been fed lies long enough. Luke will answer. Eliza stepped into the sunlight, its warmth no longer a punishment but a chance to breathe. She looked at Jacob. You saved me. He smiled faintly. Maybe you saved yourself. I just rode by. The story leaves us with a question: how often do we turn away when lies are easier than truth? Courage can rise from ordinary souls, and justice, though threatened, can prevail if one person refuses to look away.